Chapter 1. The name that echoes in the warp. There are names the warp fears. Not gods, not demons, but men. Among these whispered names, there is one that resonates with defiance, not just against the legions of chaos, but against the very fabric of unreality itself. Kaldor Draigo, a name spoken in awe, in reverence, and in utter disbelief. A name that should not exist where it does. A man who walks in Imperium like a living paradox, defying all logic, all laws, and all doom. He is not a demon. He is not a Primarch. He is not a god. He is simply a man, clad in Terminator plate, wielding a blade etched with impossible purity, an arm that was so absolute that not even the madness of the warp can erode it. Many dismiss as legend. They call it propaganda. They say it's a myth conjured by the ecclesiarchy. But the enemies of mankind, those twisted monstrosities who serve the dark gods, they know he is real, because they've fought him, and they have bled. But who is he really? To understand Kaldor Draigo is to tread the edge of madness and miracle, for he is the supreme Grand Master of the Grey Knights, the elite demon hunters of the Imperium, warriors born not just of gene forging and psychic might, but sanctified ritual and ancient purpose. They are the Emperor's final safeguard against the darkness, and he is their greatest champion. Yet, Draigo's tale is not one of triumph alone. It is a saga carved in fire and sorrow, of honor twisted into curse, of oaths made eternal, and of battles that rage in places where reality itself screams. He has become a myth within a myth, a mortal soul trapped in an eternal war with no end, a knight errant in an infernal realm where time and sanity are devoured. And yet he fights on. This is not merely the tale of a warrior. This is the chronicle of a defiant flame that walks unburned through the heart of chaos. This is the story of Kaldor Draigo, the warp-walking warrior, who defies the impossible. Chapter 2. The Curse of a Glorious Ascension. The warp does not forgive. It does not forget, and it does not allow mortals to walk its hellish veins without consequence. When Kaldor Draigo, a warrior clad in the silver titan and the faith of 1,000 saints, plunged his sword into the heart of the demon Prince Makar, he did not merely kill a creature of chaos. He committed an act that tore at the very rules of reality. For mortals, even those sanctified by the Emperor himself, are not meant to tamper with the divine architecture of the Imperium. Yet Draigo, in his unflinching purity, carved the name of a loyal brother into the demon's flesh, scorched the memory of a fallen hero into a being birthed from madness, and in that moment he was marked. The Grey Knights did not witness his damnation. There was no judgment, no inquisitorial decree, no excommunication. His penance was quieter than that. It came not in flame, but in silence, a silence that swallowed him whole and spat him into the realm of chaos, where the very laws of time, gravity, and thought were as fluid as the madness that birthed them. To be trapped in the warp is not like being lost in a forest or imprisoned in a cell. It is to exist in an ever-churning sea of impossible geometries and screaming colors, where the air tastes of blood and the sky weeps memories. Draigo found himself adrift in this ocean of torment, and the demons knew his name. He was not devoured, not at once, for they wanted him to suffer, to mock him. The changer-ways Sench would twist the surroundings into reflections of old battlefields, into the faces of his dead comrades, only to watch him burn them all again. Nurgle, the grandfather decay, would offer him warmth, false comfort, a garden of rest where every root would rot and every leaf whispered despair. Slaanesh tried to tempt him with memories of humanity, of calm, of beauty, of the weight of a world under his boots. And Khorne simply sent his beasts again and again, eager for the taste of Grey Knight blood. But Draigo did not break. He could not. He was not like other men. He was forged in the vaults of Titan, molded by psychic flames and sharpened by truths no mortal should ever bear. Within him burned a hatred so pure that even the gods could not extinguish it. With sword and storm bolter, with litany and faith, he waged a one-man war against the Imperium. His mind, shielded by Titan's secret rituals, did not collapse. His spirit, anchored in oaths older than most planets, did not bend. And his will, his impossible, stubborn will, turned him from prisoner to predator. Time in the warp has no meaning. Years could pass in a heartbeat, or seconds could stretch into decades. But Draigo endured. He hunted demons within their own realms, not merely surviving but slaying. Great beasts of shadow and flame fell beneath the blade that had once slain Kar. His armor, blessed by the Emperor himself, began to crack and splinter, not from damage, but from the sheer weight of his legend. And in moments of impossible alignment between reality and madness, he would return, only briefly, only partially. Some say they saw him appear on battlefields for mere seconds, arriving in bursts of silver light, his weapons blazing with psychic wrath. A dying gray knight might find himself suddenly saved by a figure of myth, only to blink and see him gone again. Others claim Draigo walked through walls of fire, out of thin air, leading charges against the monstrous hordes before vanishing once more. Was he real? Was it a psychic echo? A hallucination granted by the Emperor in desperate times? The truth is simpler and far stranger. Draigo exists between realities, a soul caught in a state of eternal war, walking the warp but tethered, however thinly, to the Imperium, neither dead nor alive, neither wholly sane nor fully mad. He is the blade of vengeance cast into the heart of chaos, and the gods have failed to pull him out. But this is not triumph. It is torment. For every demon he slays, another rises. For every act of vengeance, another curse binds him tighter to this damnation. There is no rest, no return. His existence is a loop of slaughter, salvation, and suffering. He cannot change the warp. He cannot escape it. He can only endure it. And so, the legend of Draigo grows, not as a hero returned, but as a ghost of vengeance, a myth, a martyr, a name whispered by demons in dread, and by grey knights in reverence. Yet Draigo walks still, not because he is free, but because he refuses to fall. Chapter 3. The Blade That Cannot Rust. A weapon is only as mighty as the hand that wields it. But in Draigo's case, it is the weapon that echoes his will, a relic of defiance, a manifestation of fury, a symbol of the impossible. His blade, the Titan's word, was no ordinary relic of the Imperium, forged on the moon of Titan, blessed by arcane rituals known only to the highest-ranking Grand Masters, and bathed in the psychic essence of generations of Grey Knights. It was a weapon made to sever the threads of demonic existence itself. It did not just cut through flesh, it unmade the essence of what it touched. To strike a demon with the Titan's word was to unravel its existence across both real space and the immaterium. But in the warp, even a weapon of that magnitude bears a curse. The Titan's word should have been a beacon of the Emperor's wrath, a guiding light in the madness of chaos. And yet, as Draigo roamed the realms of the dark gods, the weapon began to shift, not in form, but in symbolism. It was no longer merely a Grey Knight's blade. It had become something else, something profane, even to the demons who feared it. It was proof that one of the Emperor's finest had entered the realm of madness and still endured. A heresy not of worship, but of survival. The warp reacts to belief, and Draigo believed in himself. That belief, sharpened into a killing edge, made the Titan's word more than metal. It became a paradox, a weapon made for real space, somehow alive and singing within the tides of unreality. Each strike he delivered cleaved not only the bodies of demons, but wounded the pride of the gods themselves. There are whispered tales from within the ranks of the Inquisition, reports dismissed as apocryphal, but too consistent to ignore. One such account speaks of Draigo battling to the Garden of Nurgle, wading through ankle-deep filth and choking spore clouds to confront the Plague Father himself. Not to kill him, for such things are beyond even a Grey Knight, but to destroy his chosen lieutenant. Kugath Plague Father, a demon of unspeakable rot and putrescence, was preparing to breach real space through a seeping wound in the veil. But Draigo arrived before the tear could be completed. He stood, alone, in a plane that was not meant for mortals, surrounded by infinite rot and despair, and he fought. The air turned his breath to disease. The ground pulsed with infection. Even the light betrayed him, turning into pale, blistering heat. But Draigo waded through it all, each step a thunderclap of psychic rejection. And with a single swing of the Titan's word, he banished Kugath back into the mire. Not forever, but long enough to save a world that would never even know his name. It is not just the strength of the blade that made it possible. It was Draigo's will, fused to every inch of that sacred steel. A weapon may rust, it may shatter, it may grow dull, but the Titan's word does not age. It has been drenched in the ichor of the Neverborn. It has carved runes of purity into walls made of screaming faces. It has split the tongues of lies whispered by the architect of fate. And yet it gleams untarnished. Some whisper that the Titan's word is no longer even a weapon in the traditional sense, that it has become a psychic extension of Draigo's mind, a constant pulse of defiance in a realm built from corruption, a psychic flare cutting through the haze of chaos like a lighthouse in a sea of nightmares. Others fear it. There are those within the Ordo Malleus who quietly question whether the weapon has become too attuned to the warp. That each battle Draigo fights is not just him purging chaos, but chaos testing how much it can twist something pure. But no one dares voice these concerns aloud, because every time Draigo appears, even for a moment, even in ghostlight and fury, the tide of darkness falters. There are no records of Draigo losing his weapon, no instance of it falling from his hand, no tale of it being taken or stolen. That is not because it hasn't been tried, but because the warp itself seems incapable of separating Draigo from his blade. It is part of him now, a piece of Titan soul bound to a warrior whose war has no end. Even the demons know it by name. They whisper it when he comes, not in reverence, but in hatred. The Titan's word, the blade that cannot rust, the blade that cannot die, the blade that makes gods bleed. Chapter 4, The Fall of Cadia and the Last Stand. The fabric of reality trembles, and the Imperium rages like an unchained beast. In the warp, the boundaries between the real and the unreal are as fragile as the edge of a blade. Kaldor Draigo's journey into this realm was not just a test of strength, but of unyielding will. Yet, the unfolding events were far darker than even the mighty Grey Knight could have imagined. The fall of Cadia, a pivotal moment in the history of the Imperium, set the stage for the most fateful of Draigo's trials. The planet Cadia, once a bastion of Imperial defense, was the gateway to the Eye of Terror, the swirling heart of chaos itself. The Cadian Gate was a defense against the tides of madness pouring from the warp, a bulwark standing strong against the advancing forces of chaos. But as the forces of the great archenemy swelled, even the indomitable Cadians found themselves on the brink. For centuries, they stood unwavering in their duty to the Emperor, but no force, no matter how dedicated, could withstand the raw power of the dark gods forever. As Draigo's brothers-in-arms fought desperately to hold the line, Draigo himself stood at the forefront, with his iconic Nemesis IV sword, Justicar's Wrath, raised high. He cleaved through the ranks of chaos, his resolve as solid as the iron walls of the Imperium itself. However, there was no victory in sight. Despite their undying devotion to the Emperor and the sacrifices of thousands, Cadia fell to relentless assault of Abaddon the Despoiler. The collapse of the Cadian Gate sent shockwaves throughout the Imperium, and with it came the knowledge that the galaxy would never be the same again. But for Draigo, the loss of Cadia was not just another battlefield defeat. It was the unraveling of his greatest nightmare, the awakening of an unimaginable evil. In the aftermath of Cadia's fall, the forces of chaos surged, and the Imperium was left reeling, trying to regroup. In the heart of this chaos, Draigo made his fateful decision. When the darkness of the warp consumed the battlefield and the Imperium's finest warriors were torn asunder, Draigo, driven by his unrelenting duty to protect humanity, sought to confront the powers that had torn his world apart. It was here, amidst the ruin of Cadia, that Draigo made his ill-fated journey into the warp, stepping beyond the veil of reality to challenge the horrors that lurk within. The Grey Knight's dedication to the Emperor was unmatched, but in the Imperium, even his indomitable will could not prevent what would come next. As Draigo ventured deeper into the warp, the fabric of the universe itself seemed to buckle under the pressure of chaos. But his journey was not a solitary one. The warp was a realm of constant motion, an unrelenting force of madness that could twist even the strongest of minds. For Draigo, the path forward was not a simple one. The chaos that tore through the warp mirrored the destruction on the physical plane. The souls of the fallen screamed in eternal agony, and the shattered ruins of Cadia loomed like a twisted monument to the endless war. But it was here, in this unholy place, that Draigo would face his greatest test, an encounter with a force unlike any he had ever encountered. The forces of chaos, led by the dark entities that rule the Imperium, were a threat that even the mighty Grey Knights struggled to comprehend. The Chaos Gods themselves had long desired to bend Draigo to their will, to corrupt his soul and twist him into a weapon of destruction. But Draigo's unwavering loyalty to the Emperor was his greatest shield. His battle within the warp was no ordinary fight. It was not just a battle of might and weaponry, but one of willpower and conviction. As Draigo faced the temptations and horrors of the Imperium, he found himself in a battle against time itself, knowing that every moment spent in the warp brought him closer to either salvation or eternal damnation. But the Grey Knight's defiance, his unyielding belief in his mission, drove him forward. With every step, the warp bent and twisted, but Draigo refused to succumb. His strength of will was not to be underestimated, even by the gods of chaos themselves. His resolve was as unbreakable as the Emperor's light, and with each passing day, he became more of a legend, not just among the Grey Knights, but among the entire Imperium. However, Draigo was not alone in his journey. The warp is a realm full of strange allies and foes alike, some who seek to manipulate the fate of mortals, while others seek to obliterate them entirely. One such force that came to Draigo's aid was none other than a mysterious and ancient figure known as the Emperor's Champion, a warrior who had fought alongside the Grey Knights during their most challenging trials. This champion, whose true identity remained unknown to all but select few, became an unlikely ally to Draigo in his battle against the forces of chaos. Together, Draigo and the Emperor's Champion faced a relentless tide of warp horrors that sought to drown them in madness and despair. Each battle they fought together seemed to take them deeper into the heart of the warp, a place where the laws of reality held no sway. The two warriors were pushed to their limits, and each encounter with the warp's horrors only fueled Draigo's unshakable resolve. For Draigo, the ultimate test was not in defeating the minions of chaos, but in resisting the temptation to give in to the very forces that sought to corrupt him. As the days turned to weeks, and the weeks to months, Draigo's struggle against the Imperium became not just a fight for survival, but a battle for his very soul. In the end, Draigo's defiance would prove to be his greatest weapon. Though the forces of chaos were powerful beyond measure, they could not break the spirit of the Grey Knight. His journey into the warp would not be without its trials, but Draigo's unbreakable will, his unwavering faith in the Emperor, and a commitment to protecting humanity would carry him through. As Draigo emerged from the depths of the warp, scarred but unbroken, he would find that the galaxy had changed. The fall of Cadia and the chaos that followed would have lasting consequences, but Draigo remained steadfast. He had defied the very gods of chaos themselves, and in doing so, he had proven that no matter how dark the times, the light of the Emperor would always find a way to pierce through the shadow. Chapter 5. The Return and the Fate of Draigo. After surviving the horrific chaos of the warp, Kaldor Draigo returned to material world, a changed man. But his journey was far from over. In fact, the trials he endured in the Imperium had only hardened his resolve and transformed him into something greater, something beyond even what he'd been before. His mind and spirit had been tested to their very limits, and when Draigo finally returned to the Imperium, the galaxy was not the same place it had been when he left. The return of Draigo was heralded as a miraculous event, though few could truly comprehend the magnitude of his journey. The tale of his time in the warp, locked in a battle for his very soul, was a legend in the making. He had walked into the very heart of chaos itself and emerged victorious. To the Imperium, Draigo's return was seen as a symbol of hope, a beacon in a galaxy darkened by war and the forces of the warp. Yet, even though Draigo had returned, the war he had fought in the warp was not truly over. The horrors he faced there were still fresh in his mind, and they would continue to haunt him. But the Grey Knight, ever the stalwart defender of humanity, refused to be broken. Instead, Draigo became even more resolute in his duty to the Emperor, knowing that his mission was far from complete. With his return, Draigo was once again thrust into the heart of the Imperium's most dire conflicts. The forces of chaos, now emboldened by their victories, pressed onward with increasing ferocity. The galaxy seemed to crumble under the weight of endless war, and Draigo's presence was needed more than ever before. But while Draigo had returned, the consequences of his time in the warp were not immediately apparent to those around him. His mind and body bore the marks of his journey, both physical and mental. The warp had left its scars on him, deep, unsettling wounds that could never fully heal. Yet Draigo wore these marks with pride, for they were a testament to his unbreakable will and his triumph over the very forces that sought to consume him. The Grey Knight's return was not without its challenges. He was forced to adapt to a universe that had changed in his absence. The fall of Cadia had shifted the balance of power, and the Imperium was now reeling from the effects of this catastrophic event. Draigo knew that his return was not merely a chance for personal redemption. It was an opportunity to stand firm against the forces that threatened to tear the galaxy apart. With each battle that Draigo fought, it became clear that his time in the warp had not diminished his strength. If anything, it had enhanced it. His mastery of the Nemesis Force weapons grew, and his understanding of the warp allowed him to navigate its dangers with precision that few could match. The experiences of the warp had turned Draigo into a weapon forged in the very fires of chaos itself. His ability to perceive the shifting tides of the warp and his talent for harnessing its energies made him an invaluable asset in the war against the dark gods. Yet, Draigo was not invincible. His time in the Imperium had shown him the true face of the Chaos Gods. He had witnessed their cruelty, their hunger, and their desire to twist and corrupt all that was good. These experiences had forged a deep hatred within him for the forces of chaos, but it also opened his eyes to the true nature of the Imperium's eternal struggle. The Imperium's battle was not just against the forces of chaos. It was a battle against the very nature of existence itself. In the end, the struggle for humanity's survival was not merely a war of weapons and strength, but a war of ideals, of belief, loyalty, and conviction. As Draigo continued his fight, his reputation grew. The stories of his deeds became legendary. It was said that no foe could stand before him, for Draigo's was as indomitable as the Emperor's own. But Draigo was not content to rest on his laurels. He understood that his battle was not yet won. Even in his greatest moments of triumph, he knew that the forces of chaos were still out there, ever encroaching, ever hungry for destruction. For Draigo, the war was personal. The Chaos Gods had tried to break him, to corrupt him, but they had failed. He had proven himself stronger than they ever anticipated. But the battle was far from over, and the forces of chaos would not be so easily defeated. Draigo's resolve only deepened as he faced the endless tide of enemies that rose up against the Imperium. His actions would have lasting consequences, not just for Grey Knights, but for all of humanity. As Draigo's legend grew, so too did the respect he commanded among his fellow Grey Knights. They saw in him a leader, a warrior who would walk through the worst the universe had to offer and emerge victorious. But Draigo was not content to lead from the front alone. He understood that victory could only be achieved through unity. He worked tirelessly to strengthen the bonds between his brothers, ensuring that the Grey Knights remained a cohesive and unshakable force in the fight against chaos. With every battle, Draigo's name became synonymous with hope. His mere presence on the battlefield inspired his fellow warriors to fight with greater ferocity, knowing that the Grey Knights' most powerful champion was among them. But Draigo was not without his doubts. He knew that even his strength would not be enough to turn the tide of the war alone. The forces of chaos were relentless, and each victory was hard-earned. Yet, Draigo's indomitable will, forged in the crucible of the warp, remained unbroken. He fought for the Imperium with a passion that few could match. For Draigo, the battle was not just about defeating chaos. It was about ensuring survival of humanity, a duty he would carry to the very end. Chapter 6, The Unyielding Vigil. Kaldor Draigo's name became synonymous with unrelenting vigilance. No longer just a warrior of the Grey Knights, he was a sentinel, a watchful guardian who stood as humanity's final bastion against the ever-encroaching dark. The universe around him was a perpetual war zone, a battleground torn asunder by the forces of chaos, alien invasions, and the brutal wars of the Imperium. Yet, in this tempest, Draigo remained the embodiment of unyielding will. No matter how fierce the storm, he would stand firm. His service to the Emperor had transcended the mortal understanding of a simple warrior. He was something more, something beyond the normal constraints of human mortality. The trials he had endured in the warp had granted him not just strength, but the wisdom of the ages. Draigo's perspective on the universe had shifted. The warp was no longer a realm of terror to him, but a place where he had learned to see beyond the material world's surface. He could sense the faintest ripple in the fabric of the warp, could feel the pull of the dark gods even from light years away. This heightened awareness became his greatest weapon. Yet, even as Draigo grew more powerful, his burden grew heavier. The more he fought, the more he felt the weight of his experiences. He had seen countless battles, fought and bled for his brothers, and stood against horrors that would break the strongest of men. He had emerged victorious, but the question remained, at what cost? The toll of the warp was not something Draigo could shake off. His very essence had been twisted, reshaped in the fires of chaos. He could feel the dark energies whispering at the edges of his mind, tempting him with power, urging him to embrace the darkness. But Draigo, ever faithful to the Emperor and the ideals of the Imperium, resisted. The vigilance that had once been a mere duty became a personal struggle. Every step he took, every battle he fought, was a reaffirmation of his will to remain pure in the face of overwhelming temptation. The Grey Knights, Draigo's brothers in arms, were ever by his side, but they too understood that their greatest warrior was beginning to change in ways that even they could not fully comprehend. Draigo's power was undeniable, and his strategic mind had proven invaluable in the war against chaos. But they saw the toll his experiences had taken on him. The nights when his eyes were clouded with exhaustion, the moments when his face hardened with the weight of his burdens. Despite the relentless onslaught of enemies, Draigo never once faltered, but his brothers could not help but wonder if even he, the warp-walking warrior, was nearing his breaking point. The vigilance Draigo had committed himself to wasn't merely a matter of standing guard. It was a life dedicated to the war against chaos, fighting not just in battles, but in the endless struggle to resist the temptations of the warp. Every moment of peace was fleeting, for the forces of chaos never stopped. Draigo's mind and soul had become a battlefield in themselves. And even as he drove back the demons, even as he fell upon the forces of chaos like an unstoppable force of nature, the darkness within him lingered. It was an ever-present shadow, a constant reminder of the battle he waged not just in the universe, but within his own spirit. And yet, despite it all, Draigo never gave up. He understood the true nature of his mission. The Imperium needed him. Humanity needed him. His fight was no longer just a personal one. It was a fight for the very survival of the human race. He would not let the Emperor's dream die. He would not let the forces of chaos win, no matter the cost of his body or soul. The Grey Knights had fought many battles, but with Draigo at their helm, they were unmatched. His leadership was nothing short of legendary, and his presence inspired his brothers to fight harder, to push further, to risk it all in the name of the Emperor. Draigo knew, however, that the true enemy was not just the demons of the warp, nor the alien invaders that sought to wipe out humanity. The true enemy, he realized, was a quiet desperation that threatened to overtake the Imperium in its darkest hours. It was a fear that, no matter how many battles they won, the Imperium would fall. And so Draigo fought, not for glory, not for fame, but because he had to. He fought because the Imperium depended on him, because humanity depended on him. His was a never-ending battle, one that would take everything from him until the very end. But that end was not yet in sight. Kaldor Draigo would remain vigilant, a lone sentinel standing watch against the darkness that sought to destroy all that he held dear. Chapter 7, The Curse of Victory. Even as Kaldor Draigo's fame spread across the stars, even as his name became a symbol of unwavering resistance against the forces of chaos, a curse followed him, a curse that no victory, no matter how great, could rid him of. This curse was not of the body, but of the soul. It was the understanding, the certainty that there would never be an end to the fight, no matter how many battles were won. Each victory over the chaos forces, each demonic incursion repelled, brought momentary satisfaction. But Draigo knew better than most that the war was never truly over. The forces of chaos were ever-changing, their machinations endless. For each demonic force that he cast back into warp, 1,000 more emerged. Draigo had spent centuries in this unyielding war. He had known triumphs, yes, grand victories against some of the most malevolent beings the galaxy had ever known. Yet, with every victory came the knowledge that the war would continue, the threat would persist, and there was always another battle to fight. He was no stranger to the weight of this truth. The victory of the Grey Knights came at a cost, not in mere casualties, but in the toll it took on the psyche of each brother. Draigo had witnessed the fall of many. A few had succumbed to the temptations of chaos, while others have been worn down by the sheer weight of their eternal vigilance. For Draigo, it was not just the physical exhaustion of battle that gnawed at him, but the emotional strain of never knowing when the next attack would come, when the next battle would be fought. His brothers in arms, those unyielding warriors of the Grey Knights, often looked to him for guidance, for strength. Draigo, despite his strength and resolve, understood the burden of leadership. A leader could never show weakness, could never express doubt. To do so would shatter the morale of his warriors. And so Draigo kept his thoughts, his fears, to himself. It was a stoic leadership that had made him legendary, but it also isolated him. Even among his closest allies, Draigo was a figure apart, a warrior who had borne the greatest burdens and had yet to show any signs of yielding. The curse of victory, this endless war that seemed to have no resolution, had become Draigo's fate. He was the unrelenting blade of the Emperor, cutting through the darkness, but never finding peace. Even when he returned victorious from the most dangerous of missions, he was met with another summons, another battle. The Imperium needed him, and so he fought. But in the quiet moments between battles, Draigo wondered if there would ever be an end to this relentless cycle. For Kaldor Draigo, victory was no longer a cause for celebration. He had seen too much, lost too much. His soul, forged in the fires of battle, had become weathered by the constant war. His mind, too, was scarred by the endless mental and spiritual strain. Yet, he could not stop. He could not rest. The Grey Knights needed him. The Imperium needed him. And the Emperors would demand his unwavering dedication. But deep within, Draigo knew that the curse of victory was eternal struggle. No matter how many demons he smote, no matter how many chaos forces were driven back, the war would continue. It was a cycle that would never end, and Kaldor Draigo, the greatest of the Grey Knights, would be bound to it for all eternity. This truth weighed heavily upon him, yet it did not break him. It only fueled his resolve. Chapter 8, The Legacy of Draigo. Kaldor Draigo's name would echo throughout the history of the Imperium for millennia to come. He would be remembered as one of the greatest heroes to ever serve the Emperor, a warrior who had faced the very horrors of the warp and emerged victorious time and again. But Draigo's legacy would not be defined simply by the victories he achieved or the battles he fought. No, Draigo's true legacy would lie in the example he set for future generations. The Grey Knights, for all their might, were a brotherhood forged in secrecy and shrouded in mystery. They were the Emperor's finest warriors, chosen not only for their skills, but for their unwavering faith in the Emperor's cause. To be inducted into the Grey Knights was no small feat. It was a calling, a destiny that few could ever hope to achieve. But Kaldor Draigo had become something more than just a member of this brotherhood. He had become a symbol of all that the Grey Knights stood for: sacrifice, honor, loyalty, and an unbreakable will to defeat the forces of chaos, no matter the cost. Through Draigo's example, the Grey Knights learned that true strength was not simply in physical power or in the ability to wield a weapon. It was in the ability to endure. It was in the willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good, to face impossible odds and still stand firm in the face of overwhelming darkness. Draigo had not just taught his brothers how to fight. He had taught them how to survive in a universe that was beyond cruel. His life, dedicated to the fight against chaos, would inspire future generations of warriors to rise above their fears and doubts and stand as guardians of humanity's future. But Draigo's legacy extended beyond the Grey Knights. His influence reached throughout the Imperium, touching every corner of the galaxy. He was a shining example of the unyielding strength that the Emperor's soldiers were meant to embody. His victories were heralded across the stars, and his name was known to all who stood against the forces of chaos. Draigo had become a legend in his own right, but his story would be passed down not just as a tale of battles fought and victories won, but as a testament to the indomitable will of mankind. In the end, Kaldor Draigo's legacy was not simply the destruction of demons or the defeat of chaos. His true legacy was the inspiration he left in the hearts of those who followed him. He had shown them what it meant to be a true warrior, to be a hero, and in the darkness of the universe, where chaos sought to devour all, his example would continue to shine as a beacon for all who fought in the Emperor's name. Thank you for listening to this lore. If you loved it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button.